the compensation fund called the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund. The people who administrate that plan to cut the future payouts in half, and in some cases cut them by 70%. And they said the reason was they were struggling with the surge of new claims from people who have gotten sick and the families of those who have died. So this is back in February. Now, the fund was opened by the federal government in 2011, 10 years, 10 fucking years after the tragedy occurred. And the idea was to compensate for the deaths and illnesses linked to the toxic exposure that occurred at the World Trade Center in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, which I don't quite understand, and the Pentagon. Up until February of this year, $7.3 billion has been paid out. Well, I'm sorry, the fund was $7.3 billion, and they'd paid out about $5 billion to roughly 21,000 claimants. And about 700 of those claims were for deaths that occurred after the attacks, considerable amount of time after the attacks. So in February, the fund was faced with more than 19,000 additional unpaid claims. So the math was getting a little difficult. Not impossible, because we are a country where the leader of this country can whip his dick out and brag, figuratively speaking, about how he really supports the military with $750 billion fucking dollars to maintain American empire. 800 billion fucking dollars. But people who were left unemployed, physically wrecked by an attack on this country, they can go fuck themselves. So, facing more numerous and more expensive claims, because after all, this is a Christian nation, the United fucking States of America, where if you want medical care, motherfucker, you better have money. Money, goddammit, and a lot of it for this shit. Your kidneys are failing, you better have money, motherfucker. Your liver is rotting, you better have money. Your arteries are clogged, your brain is you better have money. So the increase in the amount of the claims is commensurate with the increase over the past 20 years in the cost of medical care and medicine. You pharmaceutical companies, your medical industrial complex, you're making a lot of fucking money off sickness and death, aren't you? And I don't blame you greedy fuckers for not wanting to lower your prices so people can get treatment, you filthy bastards. But this is a Christian nation, goddammit. We will not bake cakes for queers. So the administrator said there was only one fair way to adjust the figures, given how expensive the new claims were and the death benefits. People are still dying as a result of the Trade Tower attack. We talk about 3,000 deaths, and those were not all Americans, believe me. Well, don't believe me. Just understand who died. But people are still dying as a direct result of having been there or worked there to sift through the debris looking for fucking bone fragments. Anyway, the administrator said there's only one fair way to adjust the figures. She said, quote, I thought it was very important to try to pay everyone something. I did not want to be in the position of paying some people something and some people nothing, end quote. The first 9/11 fund was created in the days after the 2001 terrorist attacks to compensate the families of those killed and injured. and to protect the airlines from what lawmakers feared would be crippling lawsuits. The original fund distributed over $7 billion and it ended in 2004. And as a result of the fact that it ended, New York politicians pushed and activists pressed for a new version of the fund to compensate those suffering from the debilitating illnesses that come as a result of the capitalist pigfuckers who put poison into construction of buildings so that when something like this, God forbid, should happen, it's not just the people crushed when the building comes down on them, but the people who are unfortunate to have breathed in the dust and the debris. And the dust and the debris included the toxic materials that went into the building, but also the atomized bodies of 3,000 people. And some of the compensation was for those rescue workers who worked what was called the pile. Remember that? That enormous debris field that burned for months. It burned for months in the ruins of the collapsed World Trade Center towers, the pile. In particular, doctors treating former recovery workers noted high instances of respiratory problems, and it was often dubbed the World Trade Center cough, and gastrointestinal problems. So the fund has had a couple of reiterations to take care of people, but it was due to run out. And the Christians in the Congress really didn't give a fuck. The Christians in the Congress have no problem authorizing $750 billion for death and destruction all over the fucking planet. That's easy. Of course we'll give money for death and destruction. But money for victims on our side, fuck them. Fuck them. We're Christians. When they die, if they're Christians, they'll go to heaven. If they're not, they'll go to hell. Oh. So the House Judiciary Committee today, Wednesday, voted unanimously in support of a bill that would give fresh money to a compensation fund for those who are sick or are dying from illnesses linked to their work amid the toxic debris, including the pile and the atomized and pulverized corpses and everything else as a result of the attacks on 9/11, 2001. Now, the vote came a day after that emotional hearing in which the first responders who showed up, along with former Daily Show host Jon Stewart, ripped the fucking lawmakers in action on this issue. Inaction, no action on this issue, who were willing to let this go. These fucking Christians, right? As ye treated these, the least of my brothers and sisters, you did it to me. You fuckers. And you wonder why. You wonder why I think you Christians, subscribe to the most deadly, ugly, filthy, murderous invention ever to come out of the fucked up human brain. Here's another example. They go on and on. This is just the latest. Here's what the Post, how they put it. Anger and frustration over the fund have been growing since February, from what I just quoted for you, when it was announced that future payouts would be cut as much as 70% to offset the claims from those who are ill and the families of those who have died. Lawmakers said they expect a full House vote next month. Yeah, it has to go through the House. The committee voted, okay, we'll make this permanent. Now the House has to vote to make it permanent. And it will be permanent because Democrats control the House. But when it gets to the Christian Nazis in the Senate, the Post says the bill is expected to pass easily in the House, but its prospects are less certain in the Senate. The Senate controlled by this criminal, fucking ugly little man named Mitch McConnell, who is married to a Chinese foreign agent, Elaine Chao, who happens to be one of Trump's Secretary of Labor, whatever the fuck she is. No, that's what she was for Bush, I guess. What is she now? Secretary of Assholes or something? But she's a Chinese agent. And McConnell knows it. He gets lots of money from the Chinese, McConnell does. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer implored, that's what it says here, today implored Mitch McConnell to bring the bill to a vote as soon as possible. Well, I don't know. I'll bring it to a vote whenever the fuck I can. I choose to bring it to a vote. I'm the leader of the Senate. I'll do whatever I want to do. That's how that ignorant savage talks, McConnell. Anyway, comedian Jon Stewart yesterday slammed the absence of lawmakers during a hearing. The absence of lawmakers. He called them shameful. Stewart said, quote, "We will reach the point soon, more likely this year, when more will have died from 9/11 related illnesses than on 9/11 itself." Schumer said today, quote, "I say to Leader McConnell, this is not politics. This is not a game. These are our heroes." He's talking about the first responders, American heroes who are suffering and need our help. I'm imploring, pleading, even begging Leader McConnell to put the bill on the floor immediately after it passes the House, end quote. The new bill would extend the program for decades. Jon Stewart got renewed attention for this cause of the sick and dying when he testified yesterday, angrily telling lawmakers they should be ashamed. They should be ashamed. Jon Stewart is a Jew, and I wish he would have said, "You're the Christians! You stole your fucking religion from us! Your Jesus was a rabbi, and he told you how to conduct yourselves, and you won't do it!" Wouldn't that have been wonderful? Oh, boy. But I digress. He told lawmakers they should be ashamed on how they have failed to act to extend the program to those who are sick, and that they shouldn't have to beg for help any longer, the sick and the dying. Stewart said, quote, "Al-Qaeda didn't shout death to Tribeca, they shouted death to America, and these men and women and their response to it is what brought our country back." He added, and he was fighting back tears when he said this, "They did their jobs with courage, grace, tenacity, humility. 18 years later, do yours!